Hello, my dear children. Myself Sujata. In this session, we are going to learn a new chapter from history, Socialism in Europe and the Russian Revolution. In the previous chapter, we have learned about the powerful ideas of freedom and equality that circulated in Europe after the French Revolution. Let us have a look at the topics to be covered in this session. First, we'll have an introduction of the topic. Not everyone in Europe, however, wanted a complete transformation of society. Responses varied from those who accepted that some change. Some were conservatives, others were liberals or radicals. Let us know who were liberals, radicals, and conservatives. We'll learn about industrial society and social change, the suffragette movement, the coming of socialism to Europe, the support for socialism, and we learn about the Social Democratic Party. Now let us have an introduction to the topic. The French Revolution has opened up changes in the way society was structured. The 18th century society of estates and economic and social power was controlled by the aristocracy and the church. When we think about the post-revolution, opportunities came to change this system, and in many parts of the world, including Europe and Asia, new ideas about individual rights and who controlled social power began to be discussed. In India, Raja Ram Mohan Roy and Dorosio talked of the significance of the French Revolution, and many others debated the ideas of post-revolutionary Europe. The developments in the colonies, in turn, reshaped these ideas of social change. Responses to transformation of society varied from people to people. Some were conservatives, others were liberals or radicals. We will look into some of the important political traditions of the 19th century and see how they influenced change. Historical event in which there was an attempt at a radical transformation of society. How socialism became one of the most significant and powerful ideas to shape society in the 20th century. Okay, let us know about liberals. They wanted a nation which tolerated all religions. Liber means free man. In 19th century, European states usually discriminated in favor of one religion or another. Britain favored the Church of England. Austria and Spain favored the Catholic Church. They opposed the uncontrolled power of dynastic rulers. Who are these dynastic rulers? Dynastic means it is related to a line of hereditary rulers of a country, that is, succession of people from the same family into prominent fields. They wanted to safeguard the rights of individuals against governments. They argued for representative government, elected parliamentary government, a well-trained judiciary that was independent of rulers and officials. They were not Democrats, did not believe in vote for all. They felt men of property mainly should have the vote. They also did not want the vote for women. Whereas radicals, they wanted a nation in which government was based on the majority of a country's population. Many supported women's suffragette movements. Suffragette means a movement to give women the right to vote. Unlike liberals, they opposed the privileges of great landowners and wealthy factory owners. They were not against the existence of private property but disliked concentration of property in the hands of a few. Conservatives were opposed to radicals and liberals. Earlier, in the 18th century, conservatives had been generally opposed to the idea of change. After the French Revolution, however, even conservatives had opened their minds to the need for change. By the 19th century, they accepted that some change was inevitable, but believed that the past had to be respected and change had to be brought about through a slow process. Social conservatism means the belief that society is built upon a network of relationships which need to be upheld through duty, traditional values, and established institutions. Let us understand about industrial society and social changes. Arrival of the new time. Industrial Revolution beginning from 18th century. It was a time of profound social and economic changes. It was a time when new cities came up and new industrialized regions developed, railways expanded, and the Industrial Revolution occurred. Unit of production moved to factories. Industrialization brought men, women, and children to factories. Work hours were often long and wages were poor. Unemployment was common, particularly during times of low demand for industrial goods. Housing and sanitation were problems since towns were growing rapidly. Almost all industries were the property of individuals. Liberals and radicals searched for solutions to these issues. Liberals and radicals themselves were property owners and employers. They made their wealth through trade and ventures. They wanted that the benefits would be achieved with a healthy economy and educated citizens, opposed to the privileges the old aristocracy had by birth. They firmly believed in the value of individual effort, labor, and enterprise. According to liberals, the way to development of society was possible if freedom of individuals was ensured, if the poor could labor and those with capital could operate without restraint. Many working men and women who wanted changes in the world rallied around liberal and radical groups and parties in the early 19th century. Some nationalists, liberals, and radicals wanted revolutions to put an end to the kind of governments established in Europe in 1815. In France, Italy, Germany, and Russia, they became revolutionaries and worked to overthrow existing monarchs. Coming of socialism to Europe. The mid-19th century, socialism became a well-known body of ideas that attracted widespread attention. Socialists were against private property and saw it as the root of all social ills of the time. Why? Individuals owned the property that gave employment. But the propertied were concerned only with personal gain and not with the welfare of those who made the property productive. What can be the solution? So, if society as a whole controlled property rather than individuals, more attention would be paid to collective social interests. Socialists wanted this change and campaigned for it. Let us understand the basis of socialist society. Socialists had different visions of the future. some believed in the idea of cooperatives. Example, Robert Owen, a leading English manufacturer, sought to build a cooperative community called New Harmony in Indiana, USA. The limitations. Other socialists felt that cooperatives could not be built on a wide scale and it can be built only through individual initiative. They demanded that governments encourage cooperatives or government-run cooperatives. Example, in France, for instance, Louis Blanc wanted the government to encourage cooperatives and replace capitalist enterprises. These cooperatives were to be associations of people who produced goods together and divided the profits according to the work done by members. Let us understand the ideas of Marx and Engels. Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels added other ideas to this body of arguments. First, let us understand the ideas of Karl Marx. Karl Marx argued that industrial society was capitalist. Capitalists owned the capital invested in factories and the profit of capitalists was produced by workers. The conditions of workers could not improve as long as this profit was accumulated by private capitalists. Workers had to overthrow capitalism and the rule of private property. Marx believed that to free themselves from capitalist exploitation, workers had to construct a radically socialist society where all property was socially controlled. This would be a communist society. He was convinced that workers could triumph in their conflict with capitalists. A communist society was the natural society of the future. Support for socialism and the SDP. SDP stands for Social Democratic Party. Towards the end of 19th century, socialist ideas spread through Europe. To coordinate their efforts, socialists formed an international body, namely the Second International. Workers in England and Germany began forming associations to fight for better living and working conditions. They set up funds to help members in times of distress and demanded a reduction of working hours and the right to vote. In Germany, these associations worked closely with the Social Democratic Party, or simply SDP. By 1905, socialists and trade unionists formed a Labour Party in Britain and a Socialist Party in France. However, till 1914, socialists never succeeded in forming a government in Europe. Represented by strong figures in parliamentary politics, their ideas did shape legislation. But governments continued to be run by conservatives, liberals, and radicals. Now let us recap what we have learned in this session. We have discussed about the post-French Revolution transformations and the spread of newer ideas. We learned about liberals, radicals, and conservatives and their role in the European society in the 18th and 19th century. The Industrial Revolution and its effect on the society, creation of the capitalist class and socialism against this section of the society. Socialists wanted a society which paid more attention to collective rather than individual control over properties. Socialists wanted this change and campaigned for it. Different socialists and their actions in this period of revolution. Increasing support for socialism and the role of Social Democratic Party. Hope you have understood. Now read this part from your textbook and try to do this activity. List two differences between the capitalist and socialist ideas of private property. Okay, meet you in the next session. Thank you.